This is the Ultrarunning History Podcast. I'm your host, Davey Crockett. Thanks for coming. This is episode 162. In this episode, I will share the running career of ultrarunning pioneer Sandy Kiddy, the first woman to be inducted into the American Ultrarunning Hall of Fame. For the next few episodes, I plan to spotlight those in the Hall of Fame. We started with Ted Corbett in episodes 158 through 160. My next book is almost finished. The 6-Day Race Part 3, Quest for 600 Miles, 1881 through 1887. The stories contained in this new book are amazing and have never been documented before. Get ready for this by reading The 6-Day Race Part 1 and Part 2, available on Amazon. You can find them by searching on Amazon, Ultrarunning History.
Standing in the Hall of Fame, and the world's gonna know your name, 'cause you burn with the brightest flame, and the world's gonna know your name, and you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame.
Sandy Kiddy of Rancho Mirage, California, was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, to Robert and Marjorie Mackey. Her father's ancestry was from Ireland and her mother's from Mexico. Sandy went to Ottawa Hills High School in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where she was a member of the Girls Athletic Association. She then went to Valparaiso University, where she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in biology and zoology. In 1962, she married Fred Kiddy, born in Sheffield, England. They married in Las Vegas, Nevada, while driving across the country to California. Once in Los Angeles, Sandy worked first at Caltech and then for Microbix, where she patented a number of laboratory tests. In 1970, Sandy, at the age of 30, and Fred, at the age of 34, started to jog to lose weight, running about 2 miles a day. After moving to Palm Springs in 1974, she started running with a more serious group of runners who ran 15-mile runs. She recalled,
"I don't remember how long it took us, but we were very excited to have done it. We just sat on the sofa looking at each other because we were too stiff and sore to move. From that point on, we knew that was what we really wanted to do."
Eventually, her group got her interested in road racing. Her first race was in 1976 at the age of 40. She ran a couple of short races where she broke course records. She next tackled the marathon because the shorter races seemed like a sprint. In her race registrations, she went by Sandra because people kept mistaking her name, Sandy, as belonging to a man.
3 months after that first long run, I tried a marathon. I broke 3:30, which was quite thrilling. I found I didn't like the shorter races much, too much like a sprint, so we stuck primarily to the marathons, doing 5 or 6 a year.
Sandy started running multiple marathons a year. Her first of many wins came in 1978 with a 3:02 running with Fred. She and Fred trained together and frequently ran together in races. In 1978, she won the National Masters Marathon with 2:56. Fred finished in 2:47. In 1979, she won the Orange County Marathon in 2:58, a new course record. That year, she got her picture and a mention in Sports Illustrated in Faces in the Crowd. Sandy, at age 42, burst on the scene of ultras when she ran in the Southern Pacific AAU 50K at Camarillo, California in 1979. She won and set a world record of 3:37, beating the current record by 3 minutes. Sandy repeated that win in 1980, lowering her record to 3:36. Of the 50K distance, Sandy said,
"That distance is just a long marathon, but yet it actually felt easier than a marathon for me. Because I feel I don't have very much speed, I put pressure on myself when I run a marathon or a shorter distance, pressure which I don't feel when I run anything longer."
Throughout her ultra career, Sandy continued to race marathons.
After I began running further than a marathon, I would use races for speed work. I have done speed work on the track, but I preferred races where refreshments were available, and the excitement of the race made me work harder.
She was very fast at shorter distances. She won the 1979 Desert Hot Springs 10K with 39:20. Sandy was very courageous and not afraid to stand up for her principles. In 1981, she received a shocking telegram from TAC. TAC was the predecessor of USA Track and Field. She was informed that she was suspended indefinitely from TAC-sanctioned events, including international competition, because she competed in a marathon that wasn't a TAC-sanctioned event and received prize money. She reacted,
"I think this suspension is asinine. What is a 45-year-old woman going to do? I'm not going to compete in the Olympics. What is the point of the suspension?"
Others who won prize money were not suspended. She didn't back down. She charged TAC for sexual discrimination for not providing her the same support and aid to defend her titles as they did for male runners. In a reply to TAC, she wrote,
"Your threats to suspend me do not frighten me, but only show the running community the hypocrisy of your rules and the steady crumbling of your lucrative protection racket."
TAC said,
"Her letter solicited a few laughs and nothing more."
Sandy ran on, and eventually the suspension was lifted. In 1981, Sandy ran her first 50-miler in 6:24 for a Masters World Record, and she lowered her time the next year to 6:15.
I thought that the 6:12 world record was in reach, but I ended up with 6:24 on my first try. So I lengthened my training runs, thinking that would put 6:12 easier within my grasp. But in my second try, I didn't run a smart race. Every time I stopped for something to drink, I stopped completely instead of at least walking. Now I wear a straw around my neck, so I don't have to stop at all.
In 1982, she ran what was her marathon best time of 2:53 at the San Francisco Marathon, setting an American age group record. She won the Yakima Valley 50 in Washington in 6:15, just 3 minutes short of Sue Ellen Trapp's recent American record. But her time was a World Masters record. Sandy, Sue Ellen Trapp, Donna Hudson, and Marcy Swam kept taking turns with various ultra records, although they weren't racing head-to-head. Sandy eventually brought her 50-mile time down to 6:09. She would train between 80 and 95 miles per week. Now that she had tackled the 50Ks and the 50-mile races with dominance, it was time to turn to the 100K, which was the ultra distance recognized internationally.
If you consider yourself an ultramarathon runner, you really can't do that unless you run a 100K race.
At AJMA Ultras, she won with a time of 7:59, setting a World Masters record. She was only the fourth woman in history to break 8 hours in a 100K.
My stomach and abdomen felt like somebody had been punching me, and I felt like that for 3 weeks.
She vowed to not race that distance again, a vow that would be broken many times. Next up, she wanted to tackle the 100-miler. Why?
Because I knew I could go more slowly.
So in 1983, she went to the special Women's Invitational World Cup 100-mile event in Germany with 22 runners. The race started at midnight. She battled with tough competition, including Monika Kuno of West Germany, who led for the first 50 miles. At mile 40, Sandy decided she wasn't going to worry about who was leading, that so much could happen in the next 60 miles. At the 100K mark, Sandy had a 21-second lead. It was close through mile 94, but Sandy pulled away for the win with a time of 15 hours and 40 minutes, claiming the 100-mile world record, beating Marcy Swam's record by 3 minutes. Sandy said she didn't concentrate on getting the record until near the end.
It was a race right up to the last 10K lap. It wasn't until then that Fred felt sure I could win, and we focused on the record. We knew I would be able to bring it in strongly, and I did.
Sandy liked the women's-only race format.
If there had been men in the same race, they would have been way in front, and it would have distracted very much from the women's race. The spectators would have been concentrating on the lead. Some people were actually running alongside me just to be able to run with the front female runner. It was one of the most exciting ultra races I had ever been associated with.
When asked how important records were to her, she replied,
I don't measure my success by records, but rather by intrinsic value of the times I run. That's what motivates and satisfies me. Most aspects of my life have been fairly average, but in ultramarathoning, I've found something I can really do well.
At the end of 1983, Sandy ran in the Tallahassee 50K and set a world masters record with a time of 3:32 on a flat 9-lap lasso-shaped course. In 1984, Sandy ran in the Wolfpack 50-mile race at Columbus, Ohio, a road course with 4-mile loops.
The course itself was fairly difficult for me, thanks to a short, steep hill, which was only a 15 to 20-foot rise, but which we had to go over 24 times. It took a toll on my legs.
But at age 47, she set a Masters world record of 6:09. In October 1984, Sandy ran the Edmund Fitzgerald 100K at Duluth, Minnesota.
It was the perfect race for me. I soundly smashed 8 hours. The weather was cool and the course was rolling. It was the first ultra in which I didn't have any mental or physical depression, the kind of race every runner hopes for.
As she approached the finish, the lone runner ahead of her, Harry Sloan, was struggling mightily. Sandy explained,
I needed a Coke, but there wasn't any nearby. My handler went looking for some. Unbeknownst to him or anyone else, he mistakenly took the Coke that was set aside by Sloan's handler. I drank the last bit of Coke available and then passed the leader with only about 100 yards to go.
She was the overall winner with 7:49, a world masters record, and the fastest women's 100K ever run on American soil up to that time. With her 100K win, she was put on the USA 100K team and was able to compete in the 100K in Belgium and later in Spain. Dan Brannon wrote,
In 1985 and 1986, Kiddy set Europe ablaze, winning London to Brighton and the Winschoten and Torhout 100Ks, each of the latter two in just over 8 hours. She was right on the cutting edge of the high-profile European 100K phenomenon. Continental Europe led the way in this breakthrough, and this American woman in her late 40s was their queen. Of the half-dozen 100K races Kiddy ran in her prime, all of them were major events. She was undefeated, and her average time was under 8 hours.
In December 1985 at Tallahassee, an elite 100-mile event was competed on a 3.5-mile loop in a park. A small field of 5 runners were entered in the 100, including Sandy. Her hope was to, quote, break some sort of record. By 100K, 3 of the runners had dropped out, and it was just Sandy and Ray Krolowitz remaining, with Ray about 4 miles ahead. Sandy ran an excellent paced race and finished in 15 hours and 12 minutes, taking back her American record for the 100-miler. She missed the world record by only 5 minutes. Sandy tested her speed at a popular trail race, the 1986 Ice Age 50 in Wisconsin, and won. However, she preferred running on roads.
I never felt comfortable running on trails. When I run, I'm not concentrating on the surface.
In 1987, Sandy was named to the newly formed Ultrarunning Subcommittee of TAC. She was instrumental in setting policies and standards for the selection of USA National Championships and teams for the next 10 years. Sandy was named Ultrarunner of the Year twice by Ultrarunning magazine for 1986 and 1987. Reflecting on her running accomplishments, she said,
Most aspects of my life have been fairly average, but in ultramarathoning, I've found something I can really do well.
In her early 50s, she struggled with a persistent hamstring injury and backed off her racing. In 1990, at the age of 53, she had the honor of running in the greatest 100K road race in history at the World 100K Championship held in the United States at Duluth, Minnesota. She ran in 9:23, finishing in 13th. For her last hurrah running ultras, she went out in style by being the oldest athlete to ever be on a USA national team. She competed in the 1992 World 100K Championship in Spain. At age 55, she finished in 8:42, setting a world age group record. In 2002, Sandy was inducted into the USA Track and Field Masters Hall of Fame. In 2004, she was the first woman to be inducted into the American Ultrarunning Hall of Fame. During her career, she held 16 American and world records at one time or another, and some of her Masters records still stand. Norman Klein, the former race director for the Western States 100, said,
She was one of the first great ones. If Ann Trayson and Sandra Kiddy were of the same age and running the same road race, I would have loved to see it. That would really be a show to watch.
What happened to all her medals and trophies? She explained,
Both Fred and I gave them to local schools many years ago because recognition means much, much more to children. We have the memories, and that is satisfaction enough.
After not running an ultra for 10 years, in 2003, at the age of 66, she was asked if she would ever run one again.
No, I do miss the camaraderie of spending time together after a race, but I never even think of going back out there. The thing is, I wouldn't want to run any race but an ultra, and I know my training is not good enough for me to perform the way I would like.
In 2005, at 66, Sandy estimated that she had run about 75 ultras and finished them all, with no DNFs. She still ran about 65 miles each week. Her husband and running partner for years, Fred, passed away in 2006. In 2018, Sandy Kiddy passed away in West Riding, Pennsylvania, at the age of 81. Look forward to our next episode on Marcy Schramm, who was inducted into the American Ultrarunning Hall of Fame in 2005. With that, this is Davy Crockett, and this is the Ultra Running History Podcast. I hope you run fast and far, enjoy life, get outdoors, and most of all, stay safe and don't take unnecessary chances.